The Robinson Mystery, the case of Michael and Sandra Melgar. It was supposed to be a quiet December night in a peaceful Texas neighborhood. A married couple, celebrating their 32nd anniversary. A home lit with soft Christmas lights, dinner for two, and plans for the new year. By morning, that same home would be surrounded by police tape. Inside, a devoted husband lay lifeless in bed. There were no signs of forced entry, no broken glass, no frantic struggle. Just an open back door, a calm voice on a 911 call, and a story that didn't add up. What really happened inside the Melgar home that night would divide a family, shock an entire community, and leave everyone asking one haunting question. Was this the work of an intruder, or a tragedy born from behind closed doors? The night air over Robinson, Texas, was still and quiet enough to hear the hum of distant crickets and the faint rush of a highway miles away. Inside a modest brick home, Christmas decorations glowed softly. It was December 2012, just days before the holidays. At first glance, everything looked peaceful. But before dawn, that peace was broken by a call to 911. A woman's calm voice filled the line. She said her husband was not breathing and asked for help to be sent quickly. There was no panic or shouting, only a steady tone, almost composed. The woman was Sandra Melgar, and the man she was calling about was her husband, Michael, a man she had been married to for more than 3 decades. When first responders arrived, they entered through a back door that was left slightly open. There were no signs of forced entry. Nothing in the house looked out of place. No broken locks, no shattered glass, no struggle. Inside the bedroom, they found 50-year-old Michael lying in bed, motionless. Sandra sat nearby, wrapped in a blanket, her face pale and distant. She said she had been taking a bath and later fell asleep in the bathroom, only to wake up and find her husband unresponsive. Paramedics rushed to help, but something about the scene unsettled them. As they examined Michael, they noticed marks around his neck that did not match a natural cause of death. Within moments, the situation shifted from a rescue to a possible homicide. Detectives from the McLennan County Sheriff's Office arrived before sunrise, moving quietly through the house, photographing everything. They noted that the back door had been carefully left ajar, the rooms were tidy, and a pair of latex gloves lay on the floor. The family dog was inside the home, calm and unbothered, as if nothing unusual had happened. For investigators, that small detail said a lot. If a stranger had entered the house, the dog likely would have barked or reacted. But it hadn't. Sandra was questioned that morning. Her story was simple. She and Michael had spent the evening together, sharing dinner, exchanging small gifts, and celebrating their wedding anniversary. They watched television, laughed, and talked about their plans for the coming year. Afterward, she went to take a bath while Michael rested in bed. She claimed she later woke up, tired and disoriented in the closet, unsure of how she got there. When she managed to free herself, she found her husband no longer breathing and called 911. Detectives listened, but something about her calm tone and the lack of clear signs of a struggle raised questions. The investigation moved slowly at first. Detectives collected evidence, interviewed friends and family, and reviewed Sandra's statements several times. Days later, the medical examiner's report confirmed what the officers suspected. Michael Melgar's death was not natural. He had died from pressure applied around his neck. This was now officially a homicide. The small Texas community of Robinson was shaken. To neighbors, the Melgars had seemed like the picture of stability. Michael worked as a systems analyst, steady and friendly. Sandra was quiet and religious, often volunteering at church. Together, they appeared content, devoted, and respected. But as investigators dug deeper, a different picture began to form. Detectives spoke with friends who described Michael as outgoing and kind, but said the couple's relationship had grown distant. Sandra, they said, often struggled with health issues and anxiety. Over time, she had become withdrawn, spending much of her time alone. Michael, in contrast, loved to socialize and had recently mentioned to close friends that he wanted space. He was considering a trial separation. Police wondered if that decision had caused tension in the marriage. They also found that the night before Michael's death, the couple had stayed home alone. Sandra said the night was calm and uneventful. But investigators began to doubt that version of events. There were no signs of a break-in. No valuables were taken. The only items moved were small, unimportant things, as if someone had placed them deliberately to suggest a robbery. Weeks later, detectives returned to the Melgar home with a search warrant. They looked more carefully this time. They found that a motion sensor in the house had been disabled. The family safe was open, but its contents were untouched. It looked, in the eyes of investigators, like a scene set up to appear as though someone had broken in. In the garage, they noticed something else. The door had been unlocked from the inside, suggesting whoever had left could have easily re-entered. A short distance away, near a neighborhood pond, they found a trash bag. Inside were a pair of latex gloves. Testing later revealed DNA traces linked to Sandra Melgar. It wasn't enough to prove guilt beyond doubt, but it added to a growing list of circumstantial evidence. For detectives, it pointed toward one person, the wife. Nearly 2 years later, in 2014, prosecutors believed they had enough to move forward. Sandra Melgar was charged with murder. When news spread through the community, it divided people. Some were certain the police had made a mistake. Sandra had no history of violence, and those who knew her described her as gentle and devout. Others, though, remembered moments of frustration and emotional distance in her marriage. They wondered if years of quiet resentment had finally reached a breaking point. Sandra's version of events never changed. She insisted that she and Michael had been attacked by intruders that night. She said she had been bound and left unconscious while her husband was harmed. When she awoke, she was disoriented and terrified. Detectives challenged her story, pointing out that she had no injuries consistent with being tied tightly for hours. The closet she claimed to have been trapped in showed no signs of forced entry or struggle. And yet, her calmness during the 911 call remained one of the most debated parts of the case. Some people saw it as suspicious. Others said it was simply the voice of a woman in shock. In 2017, 5 years after the incident, the case finally went to trial in Waco, Texas. The courtroom was filled each day with family, friends, and reporters. On one side sat prosecutors who argued that Sandra had staged a break-in to disguise what she had done. They said the open doors, the gloves, and the unlocked garage were all part of an attempt to mislead investigators. They believed the motive was rooted in resentment and a desire for control after years of strain in the marriage. On the other side, the defense painted a different picture. They described Sandra as a woman with health problems who loved her husband deeply. They argued that she could not have physically carried out the act. Her arthritis and limited mobility, they said, made it impossible for her to overpower a grown man. They also pointed to the lack of direct physical evidence: no fingerprints, no eyewitnesses, and no confession. The prosecution relied heavily on circumstantial details: the quiet voice on the 911 call, the staged appearance of the house, the gloves, and inconsistencies in her statements. They told the jury that Sandra's story about being tied up was designed to buy time and create confusion. They said she waited until morning to call for help so she could prepare the scene. The defense countered that police had jumped to conclusions early on and failed to investigate other possibilities. They emphasized her medical conditions, her faith, and her history of nonviolence. Her attorney argued that the investigation ignored key evidence that could have supported her claim of intruders. After 2 days of deliberation, the jury reached a verdict. Sandra Melgar was found guilty of murder and sentenced to 27 years in prison. The decision sent shockwaves through the community. Some felt relief, believing justice had been done for Michael. Others felt heartbreak, convinced that an innocent woman had been wrongly convicted. Even now, the case remains one of the most debated in Texas. Over the years, television programs and online discussions have analyzed every piece of evidence. Viewers have listened to the 911 call, read through police reports, and argued over whether the verdict was fair. Many have asked how a woman with no history of violence could suddenly commit such a crime, and why, if she were innocent, her story contained so many unanswered questions. From prison, Sandra has continued to proclaim her innocence. In interviews, she says she was attacked and left helpless, and that the real person responsible was never found. Her supporters have campaigned for her release, arguing that the evidence was circumstantial and the investigation flawed. They believe key pieces were misinterpreted and that the jury never saw the full truth. State officials, however, maintain that the conviction was supported by the facts. They say the evidence, though subtle, formed a clear picture of deception and staging. The truth, they believe, lies within the pattern of details that can't be ignored. Years later, the Melgar home in Robinson stands quiet once again. The decorations are gone, the family long moved away. Neighbors who once waved to Michael and Sandra have built new lives, but the memory of that December night still lingers in the town's collective memory. To this day, people remember it not just as a tragedy, but as a story that raises uncomfortable questions about what can happen behind closed doors. How well do we really know the people closest to us? How much of a marriage is visible from the outside, and how much stays hidden beneath the surface? The Melgar case remains a haunting example of how the line between love and tragedy can blur in the quiet corners of ordinary life. In the end, the story of Michael and Sandra Melgar is about more than one night or one verdict. It is about perception and truth, faith and doubt, and the fragile nature of trust. On that December night in Robinson, a calm voice called for help. By morning, a family was shattered, a husband gone, and a wife forever marked by suspicion. Years later, that voice still echoes in the memories of those who heard it, steady, calm, and filled with mystery. The truth behind it may never be known.
Please like, subscribe, and share True Crime with Chris, your weekly deep dive into real true crime and unsolved mysteries. Stay curious, stay safe, and remember, every story deserves to be told.